Just wanted to do a quick refresher on adding fractions. I wanted to remind you that if we want to add together two fractions that have the same denominators, all you have to do is add the numerators together. So in this case, since 7 is the same denominator, we just do 2 plus 3 all over 7, which of course in this case would be 5/7. So hopefully you're with me on that. The thing gets a little trickier when the denominators are different. So what if we have something like 2/5 plus 3/10, and we want to add them together? You'll notice here the two denominators are different. So what we got to do is we got to do something to one of the denominators to make it look like the other. And which is the one that's better to change? Do we change the 5 or do we change the 10? Well, we're going to change the 5. I'm going to go ahead and multiply the 5 times 2. And to make this legal, I'm going to multiply the top of the fraction by 2 as well. You see, if I multiply any number times 1, I haven't changed the number. And 2 divided by 2 is just like multiplying by 1. So essentially, I'm just multiplying by 2 over 2. And when I do, I get 4 over 5. I get 4 over 10 plus 3 over 10. So now I can go ahead and add these two together because they now have like denominators. So 7 over 10. All right, so that's not so terrible. Hopefully you recall that sort of thing. But we do have a slightly trickier situation. What about when we have something like this? Now, it's possible that you could change, well, you can't just change one of the denominators. If I multiply 8 by 2, I get 16, and if I multiply 12 by 2, I get 24. If I divide 12 by 2, I get 6. There's no straightforward way to make those two the same by just changing one of them. So I have to change both. So in this case, we need to find something called the LCD, or the least common denominator. And another way to refer to that is the LCM, and that's referred to as the least common multiple. And the main idea is this, is that if we look at multiples of 8 and multiples of 12, we want to know if we keep going up, when do we get to the least common multiple between the two? So in other words, if I do 8 plus 8, I get 16. If I add another 8, I get 24. If I do 12 plus 12, I get 24. So 24 is the least common multiple of these two. 3 times 8 is 24, and 2 times 12 is 24. So I'm going to go ahead and make those changes. So multiply the 8 times 3, and multiply the top by 3. And then multiply the 12 by 2, and multiply the 5 by 2. And if I do that, then I should be able to go ahead and add the fractions together. So this gets me 9 over 24 plus 10 over 24. Voila, we did it, yay. So this, of course, gives us 19 over 24. Yay, yippee, yahoo. And you know, one thing that I encourage you to do is be curious. Don't just accept what I'm telling you. On your calculator, try to do 3 divided by 8 and get a decimal, do 5 divided by 12 and get a decimal, and add them together. And then do 19 divided by 24 and get a decimal, and see if it looks like the same thing you got when you added these two decimals together. You know, there's a number of ways to explore this using a calculator. One other thing that I'd like to do, as long as I have you here, and we've got the 8 and the 12 into 24s, I want to show you another way to look at this. So let's take another perspective on this. What's another way that we could look at getting the 8 and 12 into 24? In other words, what if it's more complicated? What if it's not so easy to see that we just multiply the one number by 3 and the other number by 2? There's a little trick that we can do here. We can take the 8 and the 12, and we'll just say that those are different denominators. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to figure out how to get the least common denominator. I'm going to show you a trick. What we do is we take the 8 and we write it out as the prime factors. So 8 is known as 2 times 2 times 2. And the 12 is 2 times 2 times 3. And if you don't know what the prime factors are, then you may have to do one of these trees, where you do divide by 2, you get 6, divide by 2, you get 3, and voila, now we know that 2 times 2 times 3 is 12. Anyways, then you go ahead and you rewrite these guys both in exponent form. So we'll go ahead and say 2 to the power of 3, and then comma 2 to the power of 2 times 3. And then there's this little trick that we do to figure out what the LCD is. The LCD is going to be equal to the highest power of all the prime factors. So here we have a 2 squared and a 2 to the third power. So the highest power of 2 between our two denominators is 2 to the third. So we throw that into our LCD. And then we multiply that times whatever else we throw into the LCD. We have a 3 to the first power here and no 3 over here, and so we're going to go ahead and throw 3 to the first power into our LCD. And if we go ahead and multiply that all out, our entire LCD is 2 to the third times 3, which is 8 times 3, which is 24. Voila! This little trick works with the most complicated denominators you could find, and it also works when we have 2 or 3 or 4 or more denominators that we have to find a least common denominator for. We'll take a look at more of this with variables in the next video.